A powerful quake struck without warning, a sudden jolt that rippled through the deep, dark waters off Iwata Prefecture. But what made scientists lean forward, what made alarms howl across coastal towns, wasn't only the shaking beneath the earth, it was the fear of what might rise from the ocean next. Because when a magnitude 6.8 quake hits shallow and fast, the sea becomes unpredictable, and tonight it feels unsettled. At 5:03 p.m. the earth shifted, and before the shaking could fully fade, sirens began slicing through the evening air. Phones across the region lit up with the same urgent command. Tsunami warning issued. Evacuate to higher ground immediately. In those first seconds, no one knew whether the threat was small or enormous, and that uncertainty is what sends people running. The quake's epicenter sat just offshore, close enough for the continent and the sea to collide violently. 10 kilometers deep, shallow enough for the seafloor to lurch upward and shove water outward, creating waves that could race toward the coastline with deceptive quiet. When the sea moves that suddenly, it doesn't roar at first, it gathers itself. And that stillness, that pause, can be more terrifying than any noise. But then something else happened. Minutes after the initial quake, monitors recorded the first aftershocks, and that's when the mystery deepened. Not one tremor, multiple, rapid, persistent. A sequence of jolts that told geologists one thing: the crust wasn't stable yet. These weren't the aftershocks that fade and settle. These were the ones that keep you looking over your shoulder at the ocean. Small waves, 10 to 20 centimeters, were reported in some towns. That sounds harmless, but scientists know better. The first wave is rarely the strongest. And in the dimming light of early evening, the horizon hides its intentions. Imagine being there in a coastal village, the kind where the sea is part of everyday life. Families preparing dinner suddenly feel the floor shudder beneath them. Cabinets shake, the lights flicker for a heartbeat, and the rumble settles in your chest. You look out your window, and the water looks calm. Too calm. Then your phone buzzes again, the alert repeating itself and the sirens rise. That's when adrenaline cuts through the air. You don't wait for explanations. You move. People grab backpacks, coats, documents, whatever matters most in seconds, and head for the familiar evacuation routes. They know the hills well because Japan teaches preparedness early. They know how fast they must move, and they know what happened in 2011. That memory never leaves. It shadows every warning. But here's the part that puts the region on edge tonight. This quake's characteristics match the conditions that often produce sudden, unpredictable waves. Magnitude, location, depth, underwater rupture. All the factors align into a scenario where authorities cannot gamble on luck. So they issued a full tsunami warning with no hesitation. And that decision, quick and decisive, may prove critical. And then something else shifted. And this time, it wasn't just the ground. Seismologists noticed irregular patterns in the aftershock sequence. Quakes weren't diminishing. Instead, energy was dispersing along the fault in a way that suggested a wider disturbance. Not catastrophic, but not quiet either. And when water rests on top of an unpredictable fault, the entire coastline becomes a stage for uncertainty. Meanwhile, in homes and apartments, people tuned in to live broadcasts. News anchors spoke with urgency, their voices steady but tense. Coastal cameras streamed images of the shoreline, their infrared feeds catching faint movement in the waves. Helicopters began sweeping the airspace, tracking potential shifts and relaying updates to command centers on land. The atmosphere felt charged, like the coastline itself was holding its breath. But this wasn't the end of it. At around 5:15 p.m., another aftershock rattled buildings inland, surprising even residents who had evacuated. It was not powerful enough to cause damage, but it added an unnerving layer to the unfolding event. Each tremor felt like the earth reminding everyone that the story wasn't finished yet. Here's where the science becomes both fascinating and frightening. When an underwater quake displaces the seafloor, the water above can rise vertically before spreading outward. This motion can be subtle or violent, and the speed of the wave depends on the depth of the ocean. In deep water, tsunami waves can travel as fast as a jet. Silent, invisible, unstoppable until they reach shallower coastal areas. That's why authorities treat even small initial observations seriously. Tiny waves now do not guarantee tiny waves later. And here's what made scientists nervous. Satellite sensors and ocean buoys weren't fully synced yet. Some data streams lag by minutes, which means that in the first 30 minutes after the quake, no one could say with absolute certainty what the ocean was planning. This is where fear meets knowledge. Coastal residents know what to do. They move quickly, methodically, climbing to safer ground. But every moment they look out at the water, they wonder whether the sea is gathering itself for something larger, or whether the danger will pass quietly into the night. Evacuation centers filled with people listening to radios, tracking updates. exchanging quiet words, comforting children. Emergency workers moved through the roads, guiding traffic inland and closing off beachfront areas. Bridges and tunnels near the coast were shut down as a precaution. The coastline emptied, leaving only the sound of waves brushing the shore. But even those waves felt different, heavier, slower, like they were waiting. And then a moment of hope. JMA reported that the first expected waves appeared small. That's good news, but not definitive. These early readings often lull people into thinking the danger has passed. But scientists added something that dampened the optimism. The potential for larger waves remains. Do not return to the coast. The coastline may be quiet, but the ocean can change moods without warning. For travelers in the region, confusion mixed with urgency. Tourists unfamiliar with the warning systems were guided by locals. Some were taken to designated safe zones, others relocated from hotels near the shoreline. Roads leading away from the coast grew congested, but the movement was steady, disciplined, organized. That discipline is what saves lives. Meanwhile, deep beneath the sea, seismic sensors recorded yet another aftershock, smaller but still present. And that ripple raised a troubling question. Was the fault still adjusting, or was it preparing for a secondary event? Scientists continued analyzing patterns. Their discussions hinted at concern. This quake wasn't catastrophic, but its behavior was unpredictable, and unpredictability is the enemy of safety. And that's when the mystery deepened even further. Reports came in from certain coastal towns of unusual water behavior, not receding dramatically as in major tsunami events, but thickening, surging slightly, ebbing again. What made those reports especially troubling was the pattern. Not chaotic, not violent, just irregular enough to signal that the water wasn't responding normally to seismic movement. Local fishermen described the waves as breathing differently, a phrase that may sound poetic, but seasoned observers of the sea know the subtle signs that precede larger, more forceful movements. The ocean has rhythms, and when those rhythms change, even slightly, those who depend on it feel the shift in their bones. In several harbors, boats rocked gently in ways that didn't match the winds or tides. Harbor masters noticed slight oscillations in water levels, microsurges that appeared, faded, then returned without consistency. These small fluctuations often indicate underwater turbulence, less visible than surface waves, but no less dangerous. Scientists monitoring real-time data also noticed these anomalies, and while none of them signaled immediate disaster, they collectively painted a picture of an unsettled sea. Then came another complication: communication delays. Some coastal sensors transmitted data instantly, while others, due to weather interference, network congestion, or equipment age, were sending readings several minutes late. When dealing with a possible tsunami scenario, a minute isn't just a unit of time. It's the difference between calm and catastrophe. Authorities were forced to make decisions using incomplete information, balancing caution with urgency. That uncertainty added another layer to the tension already lingering in the air. Along the northern shoreline, emergency personnel reported unusual sounds from the ports, creaking docks, groaning metal fixtures, and ropes taut from unpredictable boat movement. These noises aren't uncommon during storms, but tonight, with no storm present, they felt ominous. Even the wildlife around the coast seemed unsettled. Seabirds that usually roosted near the water had flown inland, circling anxiously over evacuation areas, as if sensing what humans could only theorize. It wasn't enough to call it dangerous, but it wasn't normal either. These subtle changes often precede larger movements. The quiet before a wave isn't silence, it's tension. Authorities reinforced the evacuation orders, urging residents not to return to lower ground, even if they could not see any immediate threat. Because the sea isn't a threat only when it rises. It's a threat when it hesitates. Hours passed and the region remained on alert. Helicopters hovered over the coastline, their spotlights sweeping the darkening water. The temperature dropped, the sky dimmed, and in the distance, faint lights from fishing vessels glowed as crews rushed to deeper waters. Fishermen know the rules of the sea, and they know that deeper water is safer than the shoreline during tsunami conditions. Emergency command centers continued broadcasting warnings. The tone was steady but firm. Remain in safe locations. Expect aftershocks. Do not return to coastal areas. And yet, the emotions beneath the surface were raw. People waited, families stayed together in shelters, conversations were hushed, eyes were fixed on screens and radios, anxiety hung in the air. With each update, people wondered if they would hear the words "all clear," or if the situation would escalate into something far worse. As the evening progressed, scientists reviewed seismic data again. They observed a pattern of diminishing aftershocks, but not enough to relax completely. And here's what unsettled them most. The fault that ruptured today is part of a larger system, and systems sometimes fail in sequences, not single events. This quake may be only the beginning, or it may be the whole story. The ocean holds the next chapter. For now, people remain safe on higher ground, but the sea is restless. And even as the waves appear calm, the monitors tell another story: small changes, subtle variations, hints of energy still moving beneath the surface. So the question lingers, stretching across every coastal town tonight. Will the ocean stay quiet, or is it gathering strength for something yet unseen? And that question, unanswered and echoing in the darkness, is why the entire coastline remains awake. And yet, even as the night deepens and the first waves seem to calm, the truth is that the ocean doesn't follow schedules and the earth doesn't pause for our convenience. Every ripple, every faint tremor, every subtle shift beneath the waves is a reminder that nature keeps its secrets well. Tonight, the coastline may breathe a quiet sigh, but tomorrow is unwritten. Residents stay vigilant, families cling to routines drilled into muscle memory, and scientists watch monitors that glow faintly in dark rooms, because when the sea whispers, it is never entirely silent. And when the ground moves, it may speak again without warning. And that lingering question, the one that drifts over every village, every hill, every darkened stretch of shore, is the same one that keeps everyone alert, cautious, and awake. What will the ocean do next? Thanks for watching and staying with us through the details. I'll keep you posted on developments. Stay safe,